What do you get when you mix Y2K paranoia, religious dread, and 90s action into one movie? It might look something like The End of Days. This is a 1999 action horror movie that stars the man Arnold Schwarzenegger. And we have a new, glorious 4K UHD release from Shout Studios that you may know also as Scream Factory. And here it is. In this video, we're going to talk about this new 4K UHD transfer. We're going to take a look at this packaging, and we're going to talk about my impressions of this film the first time I saw it, which was back when it was in the movie theaters, and we're going to talk about my updated impression of it now. And we're also going to rate this, or I'm going to rate it on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films, and I've been doing review videos on this YouTube channel for a little over a year now, but I've got 20 years of experience in the film and video industry as a writer, director, and actor. So this movie, being a 1999 film, came out right at the cusp of the century where not everyone, I wasn't afraid of it, but there was a lot of fear about Y2K and what's going to happen once the century turns and we go into the 2000s. Something really, it kind of capitalized on that potential dread. In this movie, it's about Satan trying to take over, as there's some kind of ritual that he has to perform right at midnight that will make kind of Satan be able to run the world from there on, I guess, until something else happened. But the fact that they did it right then, and a lot of people, I wasn't really thinking anything, because I know this was like a movie, and so it was like, there's another movie called Strange Days, which kind of didn't really deal with Satan, but it dealt with something bad potentially happening right at midnight in 1999. And that movie Strange Days, it hasn't yet been given a 4K UHD transfer. It needs one. I think it's, from what I remember, I saw that several times back in the day. From what I remember, I think it was a pretty good movie. And both of these movies, that Strange Days and End of Days, are both New Year's Eve films. It would make a good double billing. So another movie too I want to point out, this reminds me of, this came out a little bit later in 2005, and I did a review of this, Constantine, and this has a really, really nice 4K UHD upgrade, and you can check out my review of this film on my channel. But I say that this reminds me of The End of Days. It reminds me of this movie because of the angels and the demons, well, Satan, and then the stigmata stuff. There's not really any demons in End of Days as much, but they kind of remind me a little bit of each other. And there's another film called Stigmata that also reminds me of this a little bit, and that movie from 1999 as well also stars Gabriel Byrne, who plays Satan in End of Days. End of Days was directed by Peter Hyams, and I did a review recently of another one of his films that he did before this one called Time Cop with Jean-Claude Van Damme. Now he did, and this one has Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. He put these two icons in these films that you wouldn't necessarily usually see them in. This is a science fiction film, and it does have the action stuff that Arnold Schwarzenegger was so great with, but this one is a little different as far as it having the horror aspects. Now, we did see Arnold Schwarzenegger in films like The Predator, or not The Predator, like Predator and Terminator and Terminator 2. But here, I think he's really good in those. But this one really, I remember seeing it in the movie theater back in the day. It kind of surprised me that they had him do a character. This is not the typical Arnold Schwarzenegger character that most of us really love. I think that some people might not like his persona, but he's definitely out of his comfort zone in this character, who is more of an anti-hero, a little more vulnerable, but he does a great job. And now, you can't say that if they put somebody else might have done a lot better job acting-wise in this role, but I really like that they put him in a role that you wouldn't normally see him in. And just his physicality, and you believe him, though, in these action sequences. You believe him doing that, where you might not believe somebody else doing the action sequences. But I think that as far as what you get from him in this is pretty impressive, especially if you're not an Arnold Schwarzenegger fan and you think that he can't act, and when you see him doing this, you may not change your mind, but I think it's one of his better performances. Arnold Schwarzenegger doesn't appear on screen for almost 13 minutes into this movie. The first, 6 minutes of it or so deals with this group of people, 20-something years earlier. getting a baby who getting this. So they basically have this baby who turns out to be a character 20 years later played by Robin Tunney, who Arnold Schwarzenegger ends up having to protect. But Satan apparently has to have sex with this girl in order for this ritual to take place. And there's actually, it is a little contrived as far as like all of this specific stuff has to happen. And there's even some dialogue that Arnold Schwarzenegger says when he finds out about all the specifics. He's like, he does make a kind of a joke about that. Robin Tunney, I haven't seen her in many things, but she does play the protagonist in the film The Craft, which is a really good film, I think. But she plays the protagonist in this, protagonist witch. But also, so what happens, that's the first 6 minutes deal with that, and you see all these different people. There's some pretty good character actors in here, including Udo Kier, and some other people you're going to recognize who are part of this group of people who are trying to get this baby together. And then it goes 20 years later, and then you see Gabriel Byrne, and really he plays a character who's possessed by the devil, and he goes into the bathroom, and unfortunately he goes into the bathroom, and Satan, this like as a kind of almost like a clear kind of predator looking thing, goes into the bathroom and he possesses him, and he comes out and he walks over. He's been having dinner with his friend and his friend's wife, we assume, and he walks over and starts making out with his friend's wife, and then but he does all this. At first he looks up, his friend's like, "What are you doing?" And then he looks up and his friend's like, "Okay, yeah, that's cool." But he does all this because of he has a charm, but he's also he kind of looks at the guy, and the guy knows to not to do anything more with it. Then he walks out of the restaurant, and then the whole thing just blows up. So there's a lot of explosions in this movie too. It's about 13 minutes into the film, we're finally introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger's character. He's slumming in an apartment. He's making a milkshake out of like some really nasty stuff, including he picks a piece of bread off of the floor and throws it into it, making a smoothie. But his partner, played by Kevin Pollak, comes in, and he talks him in. He's got a new security detail. They've been working security details. He basically has them come to the security detail where he ends up he's the security for who he doesn't know it at the time. The guy, Satan, the Satan's possessed this guy, and he's security detail for him, and he ends up saving him. But as it progresses, he starts to do more investigation, and he starts to try to uncover what's going on. I'm not going to go over every single beat of the plot, but I will say that eventually he does come into encounter with the priest played by Rod Steiger in a pretty cool church. They got a pretty cool church, real church that they shot in. It's not even a set; it's like a real church for the most part. And that's one thing that's really good about this film. There is some computer animation in here. It doesn't rely on it very heavily. Most of the locations and all that are quite practical, and all the stunts, not all of them, but a lot of the stunts were done by Arnold Schwarzenegger, including a really awesome helicopter scene where he's hooked up to a helicopter, and the helicopter brings him down and brings him across this building trying to get the shooter who tried to kill the Satan character, that guy ends up being like he used to be a priest, but he's kind of gone rogue. But it's a very interesting mix of different genres, and I think when I watched it the first time, what really pulled me the most was the horror aspects of it, and just in the lighting. The lighting is really low key, and it looks a lot different than a lot of movies you would expect it to. It has a very extreme color grading often in this film. It sometimes, like the first time you see Arnold Schwarzenegger in his apartment, it really goes red with the color grading, and you have a very low key lighting where half of his face is lit and the other half's not, and it kind of goes throughout the film. It kind of builds a lot of the director Peter Hyams really builds a lot with. Peter Hyams was also the director of photography on this film. Now he often uses practical light sources, which kind of give it a more of an authentic look, a gritty look, but it doesn't look polished. It looks edgy because of the way that it's graded and the way that it's lit. Like there's a lot of scenes that have a kind of a blue kind of tint to them. There's a lot of gritty exterior scenes, and as far as the way that it looks in 4K, you do see a bump in quality. Now, this release does have a 4K and a Blu-ray, but both of them have the same transfer. So unless you have a really humongous TV, I would think probably over 80 inches, you're not going to see a big amount of difference between the 4K here and the Blu-ray. But the Blu-ray, if you were to look at this Blu-ray without this, they do a 4K restoration, and then they basically put it onto a Blu-ray disc. But if you were to look at the previous restoration, which I don't have the previous disc of this on Blu-ray or DVD, but if you were to look at one of those, this is going to be a lot better looking. You're going to see a lot more detail, and you're going to see a lot more sharpness, and just in general, you're going to see a lot more clarity. But throughout the film, especially, you can see this really well in the closer shots. You can see all that the 4K, what the 4K's has done for the movie, and I think it is, you are dealing with an odd excessive grading, and a film that's intentionally supposed to look like desaturated. So those things don't necessarily pop out at you, but you do see you do see that quality difference in the 4K, and you know while you're watching it that you're probably watching the best that this film has probably ever looked. And I did see it in the theater back in the day, but it's, it may look better at the theater, but this looks fantastic. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the actual physical release. Now, I bought this directly from the Scream Factory site. If you buy it off of Amazon, you're going to end up with this cover here, which is the normal cover that has Arnold Schwarzenegger on it and some other stuff down at the bottom. Now, if you go to the Scream Factory site, you can get this alternative slipcover. You can also get these posters. You see this poster I got here. Now, they have a, am I blanking on this? they have a lot where you can buy, and it's a lot, not even the word. They do have a package on there where you can buy the poster and these two slip covers, and it actually comes with a second poster too. And here it is right here. This is the End of Days. This is the original poster. Both of them are quite nice. I do like this new artwork here too. That's cool stuff right there. I like both of the posters, but you can get that off their site. Otherwise, you're going to end up with this off of Amazon. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. And here's the inside of it. It's the same artwork on the inside. And then we have two discs. Like I said before, we do have a 4K and a Blu-ray. Here, just white. As far as this other one, I just put a random movie in here, which is The Uncanny with Peter Cushing. Let's take a read of these specs. It says, new 4K scan from the original camera negative. Approved by director/cinematographer Peter Hyams. Presented in Dolby Vision and has a special feature of audio commentary with Peter Hyams. That's all on the 4K disc. The Blu-ray disc has the same scan. No Dolby Vision, of course, because it's Blu-ray. But then there's a lot of new interviews. There's one with Peter Hyams himself, and I took a look at that one. He does for half of the film, half of the interview, which is about 30 minutes long. He talks about the time cop for half of it, which is pretty cool. And then the second half, he talks about End of Days. And it's also got an interview with the screenwriter and the visual effects supervisor. And then there's an interview with the composer. And after that, there's a lot of other archival special features as well. A vintage featurette. So it's got a pretty impressive amount of special features, and all that's on the Blu-ray, the special features, except for the commentary. But it's impressive because a lot of these are new for this release, and so that in itself is something, a reason to want to get this. And for those who don't have a 4K player, you can still get this and play the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray is going to look really good in your player, and why not have the best possible version? You got the 4K and the Blu-ray. Even if you don't have the 4K player, you can still get the Blu-ray. And that's why it's nice when they include both of them, especially for people who haven't upgraded, or maybe something happened to their 4K player and they can still watch the Blu-ray anyway. So before I get into my rating of this movie, I do want to point out I really do like Arnold Schwarzenegger's character's journey in this film. He is a character who has seen darkness. Both his wife and his daughter were killed by some thugs when he was a cop, so he's been disillusioned. And so when he gets into this situation where he has to question his faith, he's lost his faith in God, but now he's up against Satan, as Satan, who's so powerful that most of the people that see this character, which, by the way, Gabriel Byrne does a really good job in this film playing Satan, and I'd really like, he does really well with some of the dialogue. And a little off subject, but another film that also has Gabriel Byrne and Kevin Pollak in it from 1995 is The Usual Suspects. But as far as so with this Satan in this movie, he comes across some people. Sometimes they'll have to do whatever he wants them to. Like he walks in on this one guy who's helping him out, and he sees the guy's wife and the guy's daughter, and he's like, "Is this your wife and your daughter?" And he's like, "Yes." And then the next thing you know, this Satan's in there having a threesome with the guy's wife and daughter. And then later on, the same guy, he screws something up, so Satan just like shoots him in the head and kills him. So he's also not very, anyone working for him, it should be afraid to die, but because he is so powerful and so magnetic, and I think he has some supernatural sort of like, I'm going to look at you and you're going to do what I want, sort of thing. But Arnold Schwarzenegger's character, who's struggling with faith already, is up against this Satan, and it's some cool dynamics between this, and there is a nice redemptive arc for his character in the movie. And I think Schwarzenegger does a really good job with this character. Now let's go ahead and rate the movie. I'm going to rate the movie, like I said before, on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm gonna rate the movie. I'm gonna give it a 4-star rating. I think it holds up pretty good. And I saw it the first time. I thought it was really well done the first time I watched it, and that was before the turn of the century. Now, this one isn't like a Y2K one where the computer thing happens. This is Satan trying to take over, and we got to stop him because he's got to do something right at midnight or right before midnight. He has to have sex with this girl. But anyway, I'm not going to spoil it and let you know what happens, but it does have I'm not going to spoil anything. If you want to take a look at it, you can either read about the description of what happens on Wikipedia, or you can watch the movie. But as far as this release, I think Scream Factory's also done a really nice job with this release. The 4K transfer is fantastic. I like all their posters. This artwork here, I really like this new artwork. That's cool. So I'm going to give them a 4-star rating as well. Anyway, let me know what you think about End of Days, if you've seen it or if you've taken a look at this new Scream Factory 4K UHD release. And if you haven't done so already, if you would like this video, and you see this box right here, if you click on this box, it's going to bring you directly to that time that I reviewed Time Cop, another film by Peter Hyams. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.